evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International for the headlines. Following a tenuous ceasefire that lasted for 49 days, Hamas frees the first group of hostages in exchange for 39 Palestinian inmates. The convoy of Red Cross cars that was transporting hostages from Gaza. They were 13 Israelis along with foreigners, Thai people, and a Filipino, ranging in age from toddlers to great-grandmothers. Among the first group released, there were no Americans. President Marcos Jr. confirms Filipino national Eleanor Jimmy Pacheco was among the first batch of hostages freed by the Palestinian group Hamas. Oscar Pistorius, the former Olympic runner from South Africa, was granted parole 10 years after killing his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp in a tragedy that shocked the entire world. Pistorius will be released from prison in January. A tool bag belonging to NASA astronauts has become an unexpected satellite orbiting Earth after being accidentally released during a spacewalk. First in our news tonight, Hamas freed a first batch of hostages seized in the deadliest attack in Israel's history under a deal that saw a temporary truce take hold in war-ravaged Gaza.
It has been 49 days since the Hamas massacre on October 7th. 49 days since Hamas launched its war on Israel. Today is the first day of the hostage release. A pause in our war against the barbaric terrorists of Hamas. A war that we will not stop until Hamas has been dismantled. We will not rest until every one of our hostages returns home. Our war is against Hamas, not against the people of Gaza. Hamas wanted this war. Hamas started this war. Israel will dismantle Hamas by the end of this war. We will never forget the Hamas massacre of October 7th. And it is our sacred duty to never let October 7th happen. Ever again, never again.
13 Israeli hostages captured during Palestinian militants' cross-border raids were back in Israeli territory where they would undergo medical checks before being reunited with their families, according to the army. They included 4 children and 6 elderly women, according to an Israeli official list. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to bring all the hostages home.
השלמנו עכשיו את החזרת ראשוני חטופינו. ילדים, האימהות שלהם, נשים נוספות, כל אחת ואחת מהן עולם ומלואו. אבל אני מדגיש לכם, למשפחות ולכם אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו מחויבים להחזרת כל חטופינו. זוהי אחת ממטרות המלחמה. ואנחנו מחויבים להשיג את כל מטרות המלחמה.
U.S. President Joe Biden said Friday's release was just a start and that there were real chances to extend the temporary truce in Gaza.
Fighting in Gaza will halt for 4 days. This deal also is structured to allow a pause to continue for more than 50 hostages to be released. That's our goal. This morning, I've been engaged with my team as we began the first difficult days of implementing this deal. It's only a start, but so far it's gone well. Earlier this morning, 13 Israeli hostages were released, including an elderly woman, a grandmother, and mothers with their young children, some under the age of 6 years old. Separately, several Thai nationals and Filipino nationals were also kidnapped by Hamas on the 7th. They were released as well. All of these hostages have been through a terrible ordeal, and this is the beginning of a long journey of healing for them. The teddy bears waiting to greet those children at the hospital are a stark reminder of the trauma these children have been through, and at such a very young age.
Once the hostages freed by Hamas were taken by ambulance to the hospital for assessment and treatment, as well as to be reunited with their families.
I'm excited to inform you that this evening, 5 captive women arrived at Wolfson Medical Center. You are finally home, in a safe place. Our main mission at Wolfson is to provide the best medical and mental and professional care.
About half an hour ago, I was thrilled to be the one to receive 4 children, 3 mothers, and a grandmother to the best and most caring hands here at Schneider Children's Medical Center of Israel. Their physical condition is good, and they're currently undergoing medical and emotional assessment by the medical and psychological team here at Schneider.
Key mediator Qatar Majed Al-Manzari said those released include 13 Israeli citizens, some of whom are dual citizens, in addition to 10 Thai citizens and a Filipino citizen.
At 11 p.m., we received 10 men and 1 woman, owners of the hostages that were released from captivity. Following initial medical assessment, they're in good condition and seem very happy to finally be at a safe place, and are grateful for all the care and their attention they're receiving from everyone here.
At the Balata refugee camp east of Nablus in the occupied West Bank, a throng applauds the release of a Palestinian prisoner named Asil Al-Tiri as part of a peace agreement that also saw the release of about 24 hostages taken during Hamas's historic onslaught on Israel last month. Israeli authorities released 39 inmates on Friday.
بحيي أهل المقاومة على صمودها، على تعاونها مع الشعب، مع دعمها، مع كل شيء. أنا فعلا فخورة بهذا الشعب اللي بيطلع منه شهداء، بيطلع منه أبطال.
The 4-day ceasefire that includes the exchange provides some respite to the war-torn Gaza Strip citizens. 24 people were freed today and returned to Israel, including Eleanor Jimmy Liano Pacheco, 33 years old, a Filipino caregiver and father of 3, who was kidnapped by Hamas terrorists and carried to Gaza for their attacks on kibbutz near Oz. This information was given by the Moked hotline for refugees and migrants. 11 foreign laborers, including him, were left free in a different agreement than the one that rescued the 13 Israeli hostages. Pacheco and 10 other Thai nationals were released. Pacheco took care of 80-year-old Amitai Ben-Zvi while residing in Nir Oz. 3 kilometers from the Gaza border, the village of Nir Oz, home to roughly 400 people, saw nearly half of its residents vanish during Hamas's surprise attack. Now, according to a military spokeswoman, during the attack, about 100 civilians and roughly 15 foreign agricultural laborers were slain, while about 80 more were taken captive. Jimmy was the loving caregiver for the late Manir Oz, Amitai Ben-Zvi, who was killed in this terrorist attack. The family of Ben-Zvi stated, quote, "We are excited about Jimmy's release and will do our best to support his reunification with his family. Like the entire Nir Oz family, we are excited about the release of the abductees and are anxiously awaiting the return of other abductees from Nir Oz and all the surrounding," unquote. Meanwhile, President Marcos Jr. confirmed that Filipino national Eleanor Jimmy Pacheco was among the first batch of hostages freed by Palestinian militant group Hamas. Pacheco, according to President Marcos, is currently in the care of the Philippine Embassy in Israel. The head of the Houthi Yemeni naval forces has met with the crew of the seized Japanese car carrier Galaxy Leader, reassuring them of their safety and well-being. The vessel was intercepted in the Red Sea last Monday, with its 25 crew members, including 17 Filipinos, taken into custody. In a video posted online, Houthi Major General Muhammad Fadil Abdul Nabi can be seen shaking hands with the crew, whose faces have been blurred to protect their identities. Speaking through an interpreter, General Abdul Nabi addressed the crew, emphasizing that they are considered guests of Yemen and that their needs will be met. The remaining crew members are of Bulgarian, Romanian, Ukrainian, and Mexican nationalities. General Abdul Nabi reiterated the Houthi claim that the Galaxy Leader is an Israeli-linked vessel and that its seizure was a justified military action against Israel in response to its alleged aggression against Palestinians in Gaza.
Medyo mabigat nga itong kinaharap ng 17 po natin na tripulante na binihag po ng rebelde. At ngayon, wino-work out po natin, ongoing po yung pakipag-ugnayan po ng ating BMW at ng DSA ongoing din po yung pakipag-usap ng DFA po natin sa iba't ibang mga bansa kagaya po ng Japan na siyang may-ari po nung tinatawag po nila, yun yung flagship nung ship, that's a flagship. Pangalawa, yung mga ibang mga bansa na nakapaligid po dyan, kagaya po ng Iran, na mayroon silang siyasawag dati na moral ascendancy dito sa grupo na nagbihag po sa mga kababayan po natin. So ongoing po yung pakipag-ugnayan po ng ating embahada at ng DFA po natin, pakipag-usap po nila doon sa kailang mga counterparts para humingi po ng assistance. At the same time, ongoing din po yung pakipag-usap ng DMW dito po sa shipping agency at yung bansang Japan kung saan sila po yung flag state. At please assured na tinawagan na rin po yung mga pamilya po nila na itong mga tripulating ito at ina-assure po sila ng suporta ng ating pamahalaan as we go through this process. And lahat po ng pa-possible na pwede natin ibigay, wino-work out din po ito ng ating DMW at ng ating DFA para sa kanila. So, pagdating naman po dun sa Israel, kagahapon po, dumating po yung 9th batch. 9th batch na po ata yun. At 299 na po yung dumating mula sa bansang Israel na mga kababayan po natin. Natuwa po tayo, kasama rin po tayo na nandoon, and sinisigurado po natin na yung assistance ng ating pamahalaan ay patuloy may ibigay po sa kanila. May financial assistance po na binibigay po yung BMW na 50,000, yung OWA po natin, 50,000 din. May binibigay din po ang DSWD na 20,000 at 5,000 mula sa TESDA, including additional na skills or upskilling na may bibigay po natin sa kanila. At sinisigurado po na yung Department of Health din ay inaalalayan po sila for any mental or physical concerns na mayroon po sila para masigurado po yung mental and physical wellness ng mga kababayan po natin.
Ahead of the upcoming COP28 Climate Summit, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued a stark warning about the escalating climate crisis, citing the rapid melting of glaciers in Antarctica.
Antarctica has been called the sleeping giant, and it is being awoken by climate chaos. Antarctica sea ice is at an all-time low. New figures show that this September it was 1.5 million square kilometers smaller than the average for this time of year, an area roughly the size of Portugal, Spain, France and Germany together. The Greenland ice is also melting, and melting fast, losing over 250 gigatons of ice every year. All of this spells catastrophe around the world. What happens in Antarctica does not stay in Antarctica. And what happens thousands of miles away has a direct impact right here in Antarctica. We live in an interconnected world. Fossil fuel pollution is eating our planet, unleashing climate anarchy in Antarctica. The Southern Ocean has taken the majority of the heat from global warming. That means ice melting into the ocean at record rates. Melting ice means sea levels rising at record rates. And that directly endangers the lives and livelihoods of people in coastal communities across the globe.
Guterres attributed the escalating climate crisis directly to human actions, specifically our reliance on fossil fuels. He painted a grim picture of the future if we fail to change course.
Without changing course, we are heading towards a calamitous 3 degrees Celsius temperature rise by the end of the century. And that means losing the West Antarctica ice sheet almost entirely. This alone could ultimately push up sea levels by around 5 meters. Break this cycle. Act now to limit global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius, protect people from climate chaos, and then the fossil fuel age. We must not let all hopes for a sustainable planet melt away.
In other news tonight, Finland has taken decisive action to curb irregular migration from Russia by closing half of its border crossings, accusing Moscow of deliberately orchestrating the influx of undocumented migrants to destabilize the country.
Venäjän viranomaiset eivät ole toimintaan puuttuneet, päinvastoin meillä on merkkejä siitä, että he auttavat tässä. Maahantulon välineellistäminen on yksi keino yrittää vaikuttaa Suomen ja EUn sisäiseen tilanteeseen ja rajaturvallisuuteen. Me emme tällaista toimintaa hyväksy. Se on vahingollista myös ihmisille, jotka tuodaan tähän tilanteeseen, joita käytetään hyväksi.
Since early October, Finland has observed a surge in migrants crossing the border without proper documentation, prompting heightened alarm from the Finnish border guard.
Previous weeks we have had more irregular immigrants coming to southeast Finland, and most of them have came with bicycles, and like today we have had about 60. Unfortunately, there will not be any movement across the border, so this crossing point will be closed.
My trip I arrived to Moscow. After that, I go to St. Petersburg. After the St. Petersburg, I go to the border here. First thing, we met an official here from Finland. He asked us where you're from and our name and took the passport. We met a simple question of our names, our countries, our numbers. After that, we get the package now, and we're still here waiting the other step.
In response to this concerning trend, Finland has closed all but its northernmost border crossing with Russia, situated in the Murmansk region. Finnish authorities have unequivocally pointed to Russia's involvement in the influx of undocumented migrants, characterizing it as a systematic and organized action orchestrated by the Russian authorities. And despite vehement denials from the Russian Foreign Ministry, Finland's relationship with its eastern neighbor has deteriorated significantly since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In a bold move, Finland joined the US-led NATO alliance in April, further straining its ties with Russia. Moscow has responded to Finland's decision to join NATO with thinly veiled threats of countermeasures. Anticipating Russia's potential use of migrants as a political tool, Finland enacted legislation in July 2022 to expedite the construction of a robust barrier along its eastern border. Construction of the planned 200-kilometer fence commenced in February, aiming to establish a formidable barrier against irregular migration. The 3-meter-tall fence, equipped with barbed wire, night vision cameras, lights, and loudspeakers, will be deployed in particularly vulnerable areas. Former Paralympic star Oscar Pistorius, who was jailed in 2014 for the murder of his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp, has been granted parole effective from January 5, 2024, according to the Department of Correctional Services announcing that today. Pistorius, a double amputee sprinter known as the Blade Runner for his prosthetic legs, was convicted of murder in 2016 and sentenced to 13 years and 5 months in prison.
What will happen from now until the month of January 2024 will be what we call a pre-release program. That's where an inmate is prepared for life outside of a correctional facility. Just like all other parolees, Mr. Pistorius will be monitored by our officials based within the system of community corrections, and until that will happen until such time that his sentence expires, because we always make it a point that parole placement does not mean the end of a sentence, but it merely says that you will complete your sentence outside of a correctional facility, which is part and parcel of rehabilitation efforts.
Oscar Pistorius is a South African Paralympic sprinter who competed in both able-bodied and para-athletics events. He is the first double amputee to participate in the Olympic Games. Pistorius won 6 gold medals and 1 silver medal at the Paralympic Games. Riva Steenkamp was a South African model and law graduate. She was murdered by Oscar Pistorius in 2013. Pistorius was initially jailed at Kigosi Mampuro, the second correctional center in Pretoria, but was later transferred to the Attica Secure Care Unit, a specialized facility for inmates with disabilities. The parole board's decision came after Pistorius served half of his sentence and met the necessary criteria for parole. As part of his parole conditions, Pistorius will be required to perform community service, undergo therapy for anger and gender-based violence issues, and report to probation officers regularly. He will also not be allowed to leave the Pretoria district of Waterkloof without prior authorization. The decision to grant parole to Pistorius has been met with mixed reactions. Now, some have welcomed the news, arguing that he has shown remorse and has paid his debt to society. Others have expressed concern about the potential impact of his release on Steenkamp's family and friends. June Steenkamp, the mother of Riva Steenkamp, has this to say.
I'm not convinced that Oscar has been rehabilitated. Rehabilitation requires someone to engage honestly with the full truth of his crime and the consequences thereof. Nobody can claim to have remorse if they are not able to engage fully with the truth. If someone does not show remorse, they cannot be considered to be rehabilitated. We want to live in a country where there are rules and regulations. And we want to live in a country where those rules and regulations are applied evenly across the board without fear or favour. And if those are the rules and Pistorius has met the requirements, then so be it.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams has denied allegations that he sexually assaulted a female co-worker 30 years ago, joining a growing list of prominent figures facing sexual misconduct accusations. Now, these lawsuits filed under New York's Adult Survivors Act come ahead of a critical deadline that could limit survivors' ability to seek legal recourse. In recent days, actor Jamie Foxx and Guns N' Roses frontman Axl Rose have also been named in sexual assault lawsuits. Now, these cases add to the mounting allegations against high-profile individuals in the entertainment industry. Last week, rapper Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy, reached a settlement with R&B singer Casey, who accused him of rape. The terms of the settlement remain confidential. However, a second sexual assault lawsuit has been filed against Combs, further complicating his legal situation. The Adult Survivors Act has empowered many survivors to come forward, but the looming deadline underscores the need for extending the statute of limitations for these crimes. With time running out, many survivors may be left without the opportunity to seek justice. President Marcos Jr. has indicated a shift in the government's position on the International Criminal Court, stating that the possibility of rejoining the International Tribunal is now under consideration.
There is also a question, should we return under the fold of the ICC? So that's again under study. So we'll just keep looking at it and see what our options are.
The president's remarks came in response to a resolution passed by the House of Representatives urging the Marcos administration to cooperate with the ICC's investigation into the anti-illegal drug campaign of the previous administration under President Duterte.
And it's the sense they're just expressing or manifesting the sense of the House that perhaps it's time to allow or to cooperate with the ICC investigations.
While acknowledging the resolution, President Marcos emphasized that the issue of rejoining the ICC is complex and involves jurisdiction and sovereignty issues.
But as I have always said, there are still some problems in terms of jurisdiction and sovereignty. Now, if we can solve those problems, then that would be something else. But
medyo fundamental yung mga question na ganun eh. Because if you're talking about the sovereign jurisdiction of the ICC, especially since we have withdrawn from the Rome Statutes a few years back, that brings into question whether or not this is actually possible. Simple lang, para sa akin, simple lang naman yung issue yan eh. Hindi naman siguro tama na ang mga tigalabas, mga dayuhan, magsasabi sa atin kung sino iimbestigahan ng pulis natin, sinong aarestuhin ng pulis natin, sinong ikukulong ng pulis natin. Hindi naman siguro tama 'yon. Dapat Pilipino lang ang gumagawa niyan. May pulis naman tayo, may NBI naman tayo, may DOJ tayo. Kaya nila yung trabahong yan. And that's really where the conflict is.
French patient regains speech after a larynx transplant. And the Mekong Delta, Vietnam's fertile rice bowl region, is now facing an alarming erosion crisis due to sand mining and hydropower dams. A rat invasion, bold rodents overrunning an Australian fishing town. And a company in Sichuan, China has found an innovative solution to waste oil disposal by converting used hot pot broth into jet fuel. All these stories and more from Thomas Eyelikeness.
Now, news and commentary from around the globe. This week's medical news: a voice box transplant, the first one in France. The patient's name is Karine. The 49-year-old has been breathing through a tracheotomy for 23 years, and that's left her unable to speak. A while back, a team of 12 doctors spent 27 hours on the procedure to implant a new larynx. Here, you see a speech therapist is working with her to retrain her vocal cords.
Inspiration, bien fort. Super. On va faire des jours de la semaine.
Doctors say she should eventually be able to speak in a voice that's close to her original sound. On the environmental front, the homes of hundreds of thousands of people are at risk because of sand mining in Vietnam's Mekong Delta. This area is where the Mekong River empties into the South China Sea. Now, sand, which is used to produce concrete, sand is the second most exploited natural resource after water. This region, also known as Vietnam's Rice Bowl, is expected to run out of sand in a little more than 10 years. The mining has caused erosion of the shoreline, and that's caused some 2,000 houses to collapse into the river.
11 giờ mà nghe nó làm cái đùng xuống như này là nó xuống hết trời nguyên khúc luôn vậy. 1 giờ mấy đó, chị không ngủ dưới hay ngủ dưới mắc kẹt trời chết luôn rồi. Trời ơi, tôi hết hồn cho nó khỏi còn gì đó, nó khóc luôn đó, nó nói giờ không có còn thương khóc rồi nói vậy. Chứ hỏi buôn bán mà sống hàng ngày mà hỏi mới bỏ đồ gì 10 mấy 20 triệu dưới quán á, là thiệt hại luôn, không còn cái gì hết trơn.
Là cái nơi sinh hoạt, tức là nhà cửa của họ khi sạt lở vậy không còn an ninh nữa thì họ rất là khó khăn trong cái duy trì cuộc sống tại chỗ. Thứ hai á, kết hợp với cái sinh hoạt vì cặp những bờ sông này là họ có điều kiện là kinh doanh buôn bán nhỏ, đó là cái nguồn thu nhập chính của họ. Khi họ phải di dời, họ bị ảnh hưởng.
The problem is getting worse because of hydroelectric dams on the rivers that feed the delta. The dams restrict the flow of sand to the delta. But still, diggers and boats work along the Mekong 24 hours a day, dredging sand from the riverbed. The government says about 20,000 households will have to be resettled because of the risks. A couple of fishing towns in northern Australia are trying to deal with a plague of rats. Residents say every morning they're clearing piles of the smelly dead rodents off the beach after they wash up on shore. People have taken to making their own homemade traps to catch the pests. After an extremely wet season inland, the rodents have been steadily marching to the coast looking for new things to nibble on. Lots of damage. A man who runs a car rental business says overnight the rats destroyed a car by taking all of the wiring out of the engine bay. He says they also broke into the cages of his pet ducks and stole their eggs.
Oh, another pool.
My wife and I enjoy going out for hot pot once in a while. But did you ever wonder what happens to the leftover oil? Likely, most places just throw it out. But a company in Sichuan, China is converting it into jet fuel. Jinsheng Environmental Protection estimates restaurants in Sichuan throw out at least 150,000 tons of the oil every year. That's about 300 to 400 tons a day. Company spokesman Yi Bin says the process of turning it into jet fuel begins after customers leave.
成都市呢，以那个川菜为主，所以我们的火锅是世界闻名。那么我们每天的废油的量大概会在300到400吨以上，啊，当然这是我们公司收集到的。以成都市的这个数量来看，还会更高一点。 每年的数量大概在15万到18万吨左右。
Waiters empty the hot pot broth into a special filter that separates the oil from the water. Collectors pick up the leftover oil daily from hundreds of restaurants. It's then refined and exported to clients in Europe, the United States, and Singapore. They further process it into what industry insiders call sustainable aviation fuel. Don't you just hate it, when you're trying to fix something and you drop a tool or a part into a hard-to-get-at place? Well, you can just imagine the frustration of this pair of astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Earlier this month, NASA astronauts Jasmine McBelly and Laurel O'Hara had been trying to fix a solar panel on the exterior of the space station. While they were working, oops, they dropped something, a tool bag. The station's external cameras spotted it. That tool bag is now in orbit. It's expected to fall back to Earth sometime next summer. It'll burn up upon re-entry to the atmosphere. Stargazers, though, can catch a glimpse of it. Apparently, it's about 10 minutes ahead of the space station. I'll be back in 7 days, and until then, I wish you all peace, joy, and happiness in the ensuing week. Thomas I. Likeness, correspondent at large, Eagle News. We live in extraordinary times.
Finally, in our news, after captivating audiences with its portrayal of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, Netflix's award-winning series The Crown concludes its final season and delving into a chapter of British history that remains deeply sensitive, the tragic death of Princess Diana. Ryan Florentino reports.
Netflix's acclaimed series The Crown, chronicling the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, draws to a close from Thursday, focusing on a subject still highly sensitive to the British monarchy, the death of Princess Diana. The sixth and final series of the award-winning show, created by Peter Morgan, is being released in 2 parts. The first 5 episodes will premiere on Thursday, followed by the final 5 on December 14th. The drama covers the UK's late Queen's journey from her 1947 marriage to Philip up to the early 2000s introduction of Kate Middleton, the current Princess of Wales. The final season notably recreates Queen Elizabeth's rare live televised address from Buckingham Palace on September 5, 1997, paying tribute to Diana and addressing the widespread public grief.
Yeah, of course it was utterly daunting and a huge challenge and a huge privilege. So all of those things had to be taken on board, and then you have to spend quite a bit of time processing that, and then that has to go away, and then you head down into the script, into the preparation, and to the research and everything else that goes with it.
Did you have to? I've never played a part who's still alive, and your research goes on every day on the TV and the newspapers that you see and online. And there's a few things that we've all witnessed since he became king, which have been such interesting character tells that it's just made it even more fascinating. And I just love the guy, so I could watch him And I think his life is so interesting.
I couldn't have done it without Khaled, who plays Dodi. I think the two of us just held each other through that. Some days coming to work was incredibly painful and sad, and you just have to keep in the front of your mind the responsibility you feel to tell the story as honestly as you can. So that's really what gets you through, the weight of it, yeah.
How many Arab characters can you think of in film who you get to know and who then die, and because you've fallen in love with them, you mourn them? So few, despite the number of Arab bodies who have died over my lifetime, been murdered and slaughtered in war and so on. And that's also one of the reasons why I have this on my hand.
Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Ryan Florentino. Stay alert, for we live in extraordinary times.
As always, I'll end the day on a thoughtful note. Our ability to look back and smile at our past is proof that God's plan is to keep us moving forward. This has been Eagle News International. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay alert, stay informed, because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.